Hi, good afternoon. We kind of met with some of y'all this morning, and now we said we were going to be back to continue on this afternoon about trauma and how that affects us. And I'm with Aging Advantage. I'm the president of board. We're a nonprofit here in St. Louis, and we try to help mostly our focus is on the elderly or disabled individuals to help them make sure they're getting good quality care and good things to keep going in their life. We do have some funding from St. Louis Area Agency on Aging and through the city of St. Louis to bring educational events to different people and whether it's caregivers or just in general to help people with what's been happening after the pandemic and all the things. And we have the pleasure today as like an impromptu education with Dr. Marty Casey. I'm so excited. We've partnered with her before to bring her one woman show on the road and just different talks and different events. And it's very, very relevant coming out of the whole pandemic, everything that's happened, everything that's been happening in the city for some years now, really. And she has a lot of innovative programs, and I just wanted to talk a little bit about trauma and how it impacts us. I know, people are thinking, well, what does it have to do with the elderly? Well, we have trauma all through our life, and it can come up and affect us all at different stages. And I know in St. Louis, right now, people are very concerned about what's happening in the schools, and Dr. Marty does a lot in the school systems here in St. Louis. But you think, well, how's that affecting the elderly? Well, they all have grandparents, and everybody grew up somewhere, as you've talked about before to us. So I'm going to let Dr. Marty from On Gun Institute talk to us about trauma tips and how it all comes together.
Wow. Well, thank you, Gail Lee. It's always an honor and a pleasure to be here with you. I love, love, love the work that you're doing. And as you was just speaking about what does it have to do with the elderly, I want to just simply put it, trauma is transferable and so is healing. So we can never disconnect individuals from the family, no matter what age they are, be it that it's your elderly, your grandparents. They have passed down some things through their belief systems and their experiences, as well as um, just some of the things that they have seen, right? In the era that they've seen it and the bloodline. So it gets passed down and we keep passing down generational trauma. Now, we can do one or two things. We can either learn how to avoid some of those triggers and just kind of rewire our brains. And so that is the shifting of a mindset. We can learn how to do that, or we can kind of just continue down the road and see if it eventually serves us. Well, what you're talking about with what we do at On Gun Institute, it's almost called trauma tracing. And to your point, if we were to trauma trace this as to what's happening inside of the schools right now with an age group of children, and we trauma traced it back, we would probably find some of those same lines of activity, and it goes all the way back to parents, grandparents, and great grandparents. Some of those same things are happening now. Nothing's new. My great grandmother used to say this all the time. There is absolutely nothing new under the sun. And she was so right, because is fighting new? No, it's not. We have given it a new term. We're calling it bullying now, because it's very specific to an age of children, and it usually happens in schools or in the community when they are interacting with one another. So when we look at that specific bullying aspect, today we are talking about children. But I also want you to look at it from a broader aspect and see where, we probably could have stopped some of this stuff if we watched how we basically some of the things that we may have said. Now I'm gonna give you an example, because I'm big on stories, Gail, you know that. The best example that I can give is that when I grew up, my mother and grandmother and great grandmother endorsed, if somebody hits you, you hit them back. That's the way I grew up. So when I had my own child, I was raising her the same way. If somebody hits you, you hit them back. But I didn't know that I had a child that was never going to do that, because the trauma response that's built inside of my child, she is flee. When we look at trauma responses, it's flight, it's freeze, it's fight, or fawn, right? And fawning is, they usually use those first three more than the other one. But fawning is when whatever anybody says, you just okay with it. It's like, okay, okay over here, and okay over here. Like, I'm just want to blend in with the trees, and just so that nobody notices me and says anything, because I don't want any trouble, any problems. Well, you can't always blend. Sometimes you got to pick a side, right? So my daughter is really one of those people where she's going to flee. She's going to leave. She's going to flight. She takes flight. And I am a fighter. And I come from a stream of fighters because my great grandmother was a fighter, right? So she made my grandmother be a fighter. And then they taught my mother to be a fighter, but technically, my mother wasn't a fighter at first. My mother was a person that she just freeze. She would freeze. But they turned her into a fighter. And so then by the time it got to me, that's just what I naturally was. I tried to do this with my daughter and it didn't work. So I was pushing my belief systems onto a child that could not handle it. When my daughter feels emotionally disturbed, if someone's bullying her, she would suppress it. She push it downward. When you're a fighter, it comes outwardly. Oh, I'm gonna deal with you right now, right here, right where we are. You got your red nose on. Let me get my big black shoes, and this is where the circus coming to town. Like, that's the kind of person that I am. My daughter suppresses. It's still got to come out. So how do you think it's going to come out in her if she's being bullied? What do you think is going to happen, Gail?
Well, I think that a lot of times I was thinking about this, that some people, then you just take it, and then you explode. So that's one thing that happens. Or if you're just taking it and you don't explode, you start feeling sick, you start feeling, a lot of other things.
Fighting self.
Yeah, but I think,
Yeah.
I,
Mhm.
I I would say I'm more to the fighting, but not fighting. Like, I'll try to direct things myself, like right when they're happening, like,
Fawning. You're
you know,
fawning.
I'll
That's a
say,
fawn.
hey, and I'll tell what I think, and I'll try to fix it, but I don't, necessarily fight, like, I'm just going to be direct. I'm not going to bottle it up. And just, and some people just avoid, they're freezing or they're fleeing, they're just avoiding. And then at some point they just explode.
Oh, so usually what happens is that they're fighting their inner selves, right? And that's where we start to see suicide rise at times, because I've taken so much that I'm so low and I feel like I'm worth nothing. Then let me get out of the way. Let me just get out of the way. Let me end it all, because obviously I'm not good enough on this other side. Well, that's still a fight, but it becomes an inner fight. And that's what I worry about with a lot of children that are being bullied. Now, also what you can have, and you kind of spoke to it, Gail, you can have where the bully is bullying constantly. This person over here, the bully, constantly feeding this person that negativity. And what they're doing, they're growing a monster. They're growing. And then that monster, and when that happens and we see the reaction of that monster finally getting big enough, strong enough, ready enough, and bad enough to react, this is what we hold on to. Oh my God, did you see how that monster just ate up that poor little boy? Like, I can't believe he did that. But what you missed was the little boy feeding that monster, growing it, agitating it to this point.
And people are so shocked by that monster at that point.
Because when
Yeah.
you see the act, because see, these were small, agitated acts, constant, but small in comparison. But you was growing something that took so much that it couldn't take anymore.
Do you think, I thought of this when you were just talking, is like so much in our schools and our things where we are pushing like kids to not react to this bullying. Like let it, you don't want to get suspended. You don't want to get this. You don't want to do that. So they just don't react, don't react, don't react. And then they're internalizing that and feeling so bad that then it's just kind of creating what you're talking about. And
Absolutely. And so to your point, I know I want to give 5 tips of some things to kind of look for so that we're not continuously setting our children up for failure, right?
mhm.
That really help them work through this situation in this process. The first thing that I want us as adults to realize is that everyone has a backstory. Everyone comes from something that what I talked
Mhm.
about earlier, those belief systems, the way that they were raised, those experiences, all of that makes us up to being the type of people that we are. So you have to realize hurt people hurt people. A lot of times the bully is the hurt person and they're trying to release that hurt. And that's why they start to find a target to attack. Now, hurt people hurt people. This person wasn't hurt at first until now they begin getting attacked, and then it grows and it becomes now they're hurting. We want to get people to a place of heal people, heal people. So when I see a hurt person attacking, let me remove them, keep them safe, and now let me bring the attention to this hurt person so I can help them heal. Because the way that they're trying to release isn't healthy for them and is definitely not healthy for the person they're attacking. So what we do when we move into a place of healing the healed or healing the hurt, I should say, we save 2 people, right?
Right.
A lot of times what we see with a bully in the person that they're attacking, we just usually reach out to save one. But you got to save both. You got to keep this one safe so they don't become the person too hurt because they've been hurt. And you got to now come over here to help this one heal because they are hurt. And all they know is to hurt back.
Yeah. And I know I said this was impromptu, but it was because I was watching a live that you had this morning or yesterday, but I was watching it at like 1 o'clock this morning and I didn't send you a message. But the reason I bring that up is I don't know the whole backstory behind the person that you were talking with and trying to help and everything, but her the smile and the song, she even sang, and you could tell that she was hurt, and then that you reached out and you had done some things, and that she's healing. I could see the healing in her face, and so that was very nice.
Yes, thank you for bringing that up because that's a perfect example, Gail. That is a person that has gone through a lot of hurt, and if we allow her to find a target, she will then release by hurting someone else possibly, or we can help her to heal, and that's where we are right now. So, to your point, the first thing I want us to is to remember is the ACEs, which is the adverse childhood experiences, right? And for those who may not be familiar with that, that's something you can look up, and it's important that you do. ACEs it's based on a 10-point score. And when you go over those ACEs, I'm going to just give you like some simple definitions of them. The first one would be, did you ever grow up with a parent that cursed you out, insulted you, or put you down often? Okay, give yourself a point. Number two, did you grow up with a parent that pushed you, slapped you, or, threw something at you often? Give yourself a point. Um, did you grow up and maybe someone a few years older than you touched you and fondled you or made you touch and fondle them inappropriately? If you did, give yourself a point. Number four would be, did you Did you feel important growing up in your household? Did you feel special, or was your family not close? You had brothers and sisters, nobody really got along, nobody respected the parents, parents weren't respecting children. It was really a toxic environment inside of a family container. Give yourself a point. 5, did you grow up where you didn't have enough to eat, and maybe even you had dirty clothes or a dirty home, and or you was lacking the basic essentials? Like I remember coming home and often picking the house phone up and get ready to call my friend. I'm excited we home from I pick up the phone and there's no dial tone, phone cut off. Oh my gosh, that's embarrassing, right? So give yourself a point. 6, did you grow up in a household where your families were separated or divorced and you were kind of between mom and dad, two houses, step parents, all of that? Give yourself a point. Did you grow up and you seen your mother be physically or physically or verbally abused often, right? Give yourself a point. Number 8, did you grow up in a household where there was drugs and alcohol? There was in the home, people around you was, alcoholics or drug addicts, and not necessarily parents, but just those that were in your home. Could have been an uncle, it could have been, but this all makes for a toxic environment. And number 9, did you grow up in a home where someone in the home, your parents or someone in the home had mental illness or was suicidal thoughts or even suicidal attempts? Did you witness any of those things? I did. Give yourself a point. And then 10, what about a household member that went to prison? Did mom or dad go to prison? Did your brother or big sister go to prison? Did you witness those things? That's the 10 that's the 10 score for the ACEs. That's the adverse childhood experience. Dr. Marty Casey. Yeah, Dr. Marty Casey. I have 9 points. I have 9 out of 10. Because I have 9 out of 10, if I didn't do this work, if I didn't work on me, I would probably all day, every day, any day, show up hurt, and I would be hurting others. Every tool, every strategy, every program that I've created, I created from a place of healing from these 9 out of 10 things. That's why I do the work. That's why I identify with those who check off too many of these boxes. I understand, I understand, and I overstand. So, the first thing I want you to understand when your child is saying to you that they're being bullied, it is so important to find out as much as you can about this bully. How many of these boxes is this bully checking off? What's going on in that person's life? This is what we call trauma tracing. Trace it back and see what you can find out about the bully so that you understand the why they are hurting and targeting your child. How many of these things your child checks off? Maybe there are some things that the bully sees in your child that triggers them, and when they are together, it causes that friction. This is how we can help them to better communicate in that type of environment, right? Because again, we identify hurt people hurt people. There's a reason that bully's targeting your child. It could even be out of jealousy that they see that none of these boxes are being checked off, and all the boxes being checked off with me. So I dislike you because you are everything I wish I was. What's the why? The second thing is that I want you to help to protect your child against bullying, because it threatens their physical and their emotional safety. It causes, when we look at it later on down the line, as things been going on for so long, it caused them to start to try to cope with it on their own, which they can start tapping into drugs and drinking and sexual activity and suicide. Those are the things that you don't want. That's where it turns into the hurt for them. So we want to make sure that you are protecting your child against the future of what it could be if you ignore it. The third thing is that I need you to believe your child when they come to you to tell you this is going on, don't blow it off like, oh, that's no big deal. Oh, speak up. Oh, just ignore it. If they're telling you, it's because it is tearing them down. If they're telling you, it's because it's tearing them down. You need to be your child's biggest advocate. Get to the bottom line. It is your job to go and speak with the administrators, the teachers, the parents, to do this trauma tracing, to find out why and what you can do to stop it. Number 4, make sure.
Dr. Marty, can I just ask, do you think that there's a lot of parents that don't acknowledge it then?
Yes, it is. I'm gonna tell you why. One, it depends. Bullying doesn't always start off on a level of extreme. It doesn't. It usually it's a small build. It's but the more that a child is being bullied, the more they're losing something on the inside of them. So as their self-esteem is decreasing, and then they start to lose sight of how to speak to certain things. The fear is increasing, right? As those things are happening, that just sets them up to be a bigger target to even more bullies, right? You're becoming attractive to even more bullies because they see you shrinking. So it's like, oh, there it is. Because you're an easy target. Because I can see how small you are. So you're an easy target. Can you imagine being a big old elephant and then now you a mouse? Oh, I can get you now. So that's how a bully looks at their target. If I can take you and I can continue to play mind games with you and embarrass you, and when I'm doing that, I'm making myself in their minds look big. I'm big man on campus. Oh, I'm the important one because I made you look small. So what we got to do, we have to not take the situation and try to minimize the situation as to if it's important or not. Anytime your child comes and tells you something that's bothering them emotionally, it's important. It's a 911 situation. And if you react to it that way, you will start to, again, help them to be big. Because I know when I tell my mom, she's not playing. My daughter's 33 years old, and my daughter 30, well, she'll be 33 in a few weeks. She just got bullied. My grown daughter just got bullied. And I had to say to my daughter, I'm still that mom that you came to when you got bullied when you was little. You don't go on in the house. Mama got this. I got this one. Because I'm still that mother. And when I minimize the bully, it might have made me look a certain way to certain people that really don't know me, and I don't care. But it made my daughter grow again. You will not be that person that's going to come and harm mine. No. So number 4, I want you to make sure that anti-bullying policies are in place in the schools. You know what they are, and you bring them up when you're speaking to the administrators and to the teachers. That is the most important work that you can do, is to know what those policies are. There was an individual in this here in Missouri where her name is Tina Myers. She'll be with me tonight at the community conversations. And I'm bringing Tina in to interview her because unfortunately 15 years ago, her daughter was bullied, cyber bullied, and she died by suicide. Tina immediately was not going to allow that bully to just devour her child's legacy. She stood up, she stood big, and she took it to legislation, and she got laws changed. We have laws here in Missouri against bullying and anti-cyber bullying because of Tina and what she experienced in the loss of her child. If you know those laws, see, now you're fighting in a different way. Your fight now It's not about if you can throw a Mike Tyson punch, but it's about you knowing those laws. And if I have to sue this school, if I have to sue those parents, if I have to, whatever it is, I have to take from you to understand what we're not going to take is your abuse. You start to get a different set of help when you speak from that place, right? And then the fifth thing that I would say to you, that it is important that you put good practices in place for your child. Your child is your main concern. So helping your child to understand personal strategies, coping strategies, and boundaries, and even access or limiting access. A lot of times what fuels it is these phones and the internet. So if I have to limit your access to this so that you're not constantly taking on something mentally you can't handle, then that's what we're going to do. See, when I had to go to the internet the other day and make a live, and I knew my daughter wasn't really in a good mental space to handle it, I called her and said, hey, stay off of Facebook for a little minute because mama's about to go do a live. You ain't going to want to see this. So I limited access, and she's 32, right? Because again, and even after I did what I did, I cut my phone off. I took a shower and I went back to bed. I didn't even go outside that day because I was like, okay, I already know I'm not in a good headspace. But I had to release because it was either I release or I suppress. If I suppress, I become that hurt person that will then hurt someone.
And that was pretty impactful, but I noticed you said that you took it down.
I did.
Hmm.
And let me tell you why. Because my release was not for you. I don't need anybody to share that and circulate that. I released it because I needed to let it go. And once I let it go and I said what I had to say and I felt that it reached the people I needed to reach, now I'm going to snatch it down because it's not a tool to hurt anybody. It's not something that needed to continue to circulate. That's not what it was for. It wasn't for that at all. So the bottom line is we have to get to a place where we understand where the boundaries are for self. We have so much self-work to do. That's what Ungun is all about. That you in our in our logo, that you is for you. Because when I teach you these tools and techniques, this is for you. Because Gail, you and I, we wasn't raised the same. We may not have the same experiences. We may not have you know,
Well, we
we have
talked about that before, and of course, we grew up so different. And of course, you grew up in a Black community here in St. Louis. I grew up in Detroit, and we talked about that. It didn't matter. It doesn't really matter. Everybody grew up on some street and some family, and everybody has something on those 10 points that you made. I had a few people come in the office, and they said they stopped counting at some point because it was getting like too many. So, I mean, we've all had stuff, and knowing
that's
that
good.
story.
That's good that you said that. They said they stopped counting because it was too many. But if you don't know what you're dealing with, it'll deal with you. You need to know. And it's okay to know. Knowledge is powerful. So the more I'm not ashamed to tell you I'm 9 out of 10.
Yeah, I was counting. I need to go back and do the first few because I don't know, I wasn't counting. Then I was like, wait, do I have that or not? But I had a few, and it's like, you're not really thinking, I wasn't thinking of them in terms of that before, but they did affect, and they affected different decisions I've made in my life. And so looking at those, but back to your live thing too, you took it down, it was for you, but it was also, I think, showing your daughter that you supported her, and hopefully maybe you took it down before she saw it, but she knew that you got on there and you were supporting her.
But because my daughter trauma response is different from mine, that was hard for her to know that I did that. She would have preferred me not to do that because she doesn't deal with it. But my trauma response, and that's what I had to say to my daughter. See, I don't get to disconnect from you because it's your story. This was done to you, but because you're connected to me, it affects me too. So I'm picking it up right now as your mother, not me taking over and hijacking your story. I'm speaking strictly just from the place of me being your mom. So I had to do this for me to get it out so that I can continue to do this work. I had something I had to do last night, and I'm in with an audience today. And so can you imagine if I was holding on to all of that hurt, and I'm in these rooms talking to people about their kids, how I would have shown up and how my trauma would have been transferred to them? I had to be able to let it go. So that's how I did it. And so when we really start looking at it like that, I think we will land and get in a better place. I mean, this is truly about just understanding the process of how to emotionally move forward. Right? It's like learning how to play a game. The more you understand Monopoly, and when you pass, you know what I'm saying? When you pass go, you get to collect $200. And then when you collect the spaces, the color spaces, all two or all three, you can then decide to buy a house or whatever. The more you understand the game, your better chances of winning. The biggest game you play is understanding yourself. Think
You're
you
gonna
all.
you're gonna be talking tonight at an event for the community on
Sure.
bullying.
Yes, it's tonight we do what we call community conversations, where we partner sometimes with other organizations. In this particular church, we partner with Walnut Park Church, and it is on North Union Avenue, 5381 North Union Avenue in St. Louis, Missouri, 63115. And these community conversations have been amazing because we pick different topics. The church specifically asked a couple of months ago if we could do bullying, and we're just now getting to it. But tonight is where I'm inviting Tina to come, and I will be having a conversation with her. And of course, the audience will have an opportunity to ask questions in the end. But it's really about awareness and education and accountability and action, right? Like what do we do once we have this information? How do we take action? How do we move forward? How do we help somebody win? The person that you were speaking about that I was that I'm helping right now, I am trying to help her win, because what I understand is if a person quits, it keeps losing. You're gonna quit the game. You're gonna quit the game. You gotta have some wins at some point. And so if you look at our lives as being a game, at some point I got to try to help you win. Otherwise, you might tap out and quit the game. And that's what we don't want. And we definitely don't want anyone cheating. And that's what a bully does. A bully cheats to win. A bully cheats, attacks somebody else to try to win. And that's not fair either. And that's why we got to be referees, parents, educators, bus drivers, anybody. Get in between that. Keep this child safe and bench this one.
That's a really interesting thought
I
about
know.
that. And I just so much appreciate you today. You did the big thing on human trafficking last night. You're doing bullying tonight, and you're putting these on, and it takes a lot of energy. And for you to just drop, your day, what you were doing today, to kind of share with us and share with the community, because I think it's really important for the grandparents, the parents, and everybody to try to understand what's happening in the community and maybe what they can try to help
Well, thank
facilitate.
you, Gail. Well, you know what? I'm gonna be honest. Gail, you're one of the few people that can call me, and I will stop dropping.
At
And
1 in the morning, right?
yeah, I will do that for you. You know that. But to your point, I did have a bus driver to reach out to me when they saw me on Channel 4 last week speaking, and a bus driver reached out and was like, "I just want to thank you for what you're doing, because they never ask us what we think, and we're with the children in ways and spending time with them, and their lives is in our hands and in our cares. We're moving them from place to place, but they never stop and ask us what we think. And we see these children in rare form, like you can imagine how they're showing up on the bus. And she says, but the thing that disturbs me the most is that's even where some of the bus stops are even located. And when that child gets off the bus, in the first place they do, they go into the neighborhood liquor store. And I know there are the or even the gas stations that's selling, you know, alcohol and blacks and stuff like that. And she's like, what these children are going and they're purchasing. And I know it's altering who they are. And the parents have no clue that this the first stop they make before they go home, or probably the first thing they do before they go to school. We're seeing it. We're seeing how they're feeding the violence. And so when we talk about it from a community aspect, we got a lot of work to do. Like, how do we hold these stores and these gas stations accountable? And then what do we do on the bus to keep the bus drivers safe
Yeah, I
and
think
dealing with, yeah.
people don't realize what's happening on the bus. I mean, when my daughter was in school, I think probably 60% or more, she could speak to it at whatever point, was things from the bus, that happened on the bus. And, I intervened a few times, but you feel somewhat sorry for these bus drivers too. Like they're trying to get you from one place to another place safely, and they're trying to interact with everything that's going on.
And that's
And
traumatizing to them. They have several students on that bus whose lives is in their hands, and they're hearing and seeing so much. It's just, there used to be a song we grew up with, or Morgan grew up with, the wheels on the bus go round and round. But if we were to sing that song now, the kids on the bus, they clown and clown. That's what we're seeing on the bus. We gotta understand it's some things happening on the bus, and these kids are clowning, and we have to be able to put something in place to assist, so that if this is where some of the trauma is happening, how can we disarm it there? What can we do?
it's funny you're talking about this because I had some exchange students before, and they came, and my daughter was still in elementary school then, but they were, well, one was sort of traumatized. She didn't want to ride the bus, and the other one was, she was originally from Venezuela, and she had some big conversations with me. She was like, there's more drugs on that bus. There's more of this danger on that bus than I was experiencing in my country growing up. And
Yeah,
so it was kind of interesting that you're saying that.
it's contained. So if you're on the bus with your bully, and your bully is the one who's psychologically attacking you every single day, and they throwing something at you, or they saying something about you, and you for 45 minutes, this is what you're hearing to and from twice a day. Come on. Come on. That's too much. It's too much. So it's
So
some areas that we're missing, and some things that we need to take some accountability for.
I think, Lee, were you going to say something?
well, I was just gonna share exactly what you're talking about. I did have my bullies on the bus.
You're breaking up, Lee.
But I know her sentence was she did have her bullies on the bus.
Driver with the other kids my age.
Repeat.
I'm like, it was awful.
It was awful. Did your mom know, Lee? Did you tell you?
I told her at the time, yeah.
Okay.
And I did complain to school, and I did make it where she sat at the front of the bus because they were trying to make her sit at the back because of her age. And the bus driver, they made some attempts, but I do remember one was there was a lot of smoking on the bus, and their reaction was, well, we don't know what they're doing at the back of the bus. And I remember she was in middle school, and she was like, well, how do they not know? They're getting out of high school, and they have the cigarette behind their ear. Like there was a lot of denial about it, but it was kind of
well, and then the bus route I was on in middle school and high school was the first bus to have cameras in both the front and the back of the bus because of those complaints.
So one of the things that I would suggest for parents, and I'll probably make mention of that tonight, that if a child is experiencing that, I would at least suggest, because when they're on the bus, they have their phones, to just record. To record.
Pre-phone. This is pre-phone. So
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, I
that's a
understand.
good
Yeah,
idea.
no, I get it. But I'm saying now, we're
Yeah.
talking about today. These are some things that I believe that we can do, and we can have, these children record what is actually happening around them, and they're not bothering anybody in Tizzy, because again, it's building a case, and you then this is where you get the law involved. And the more of us that's speaking up, and the more of us that have these stories, again, I happen to be, because I checked off, and I'm not laughing like I'm bragging about it, but it is the reality. I didn't realize it until later. Because I check out 9 out of 10 of these ACE scores, and I'm a little short girl, they tried to bully me, but because I wasn't going to be bullied, I'm a fighter, I became, you know what I'm saying? I became the monster.
Mm.
So I'm saying that to say there are some children that will be bullied just simply because they don't have the experiences in life that will allow them to fight back in a different way, right? So we have to aid them with other things so that they can provide us with the information in the spaces that we can't ride the bus with our children. So I need you to give me the information, and I'll take it from here. So again, it goes back to what I said: become your child's biggest advocate. Believe them. I don't care how small it is. Because see, to somebody else, their child come home and say, I'm being talked about every time I ride the bus. And I mean, and you looking at, well, you making it home safe every day and you haven't had a fight. What it's no big deal. You're just on the bus. Ignore them. But that would have been enough to where Lee could have dropped out of school, got crushed, did harm, self-harm, anything could have happened. You became your child's biggest advocate and was like, let me talk to somebody, and I want her moved to the front. And so I'm happy to hear the things that I just gave you. First thing I said, make sure that you allow your child to come and tell you. She believed her mom was going to be her biggest advocate, and you didn't let her down. You did something about it. And so when I said, Lee, that happened to you, did you tell your mom? She says, yeah, I did. And then you were able to tell me, and then this is what I was able to do. So this isn't hard math. It really isn't. If we just do our part, it will all add up to be success.
Mm.
I feel like
I don't, yeah, I've had a couple questions, but you've already given us so much, so I don't want to take too much of your time. If you don't,
No, go ahead.
okay. Well, I also have, I don't. They could be big questions. I'm not sure, or they could. Anyways, uh, because you mentioned earlier, kind of the example of you going live on Facebook yesterday and turning it down. I'm curious about the different trauma responses. Would you say any of them are inherently bad, or they just are what they are, but it's how we manifest them? Right, because you mentioned how your daughter, she just tends to flee. That's her preference. You tend to be a fighter. And on one hand, when we think of bullying, we think of it as just, well, that's what they are. They're fighters. And this kind of goes to the second question, right? Where back to the very beginning, it seems like part of the issue is we're telling kids not to fight, but aren't necessarily giving them another avenue, or well, if I'm not supposed to physically fight, what else am I supposed to do? And so and throughout your talk, you kind of keep going back to the, I guess, for lack of a better word, metaphor of fighting. So like no matter what, there's always a fight per se. We're trying to avoid I guess are we all trying to be fighters, just not necessarily physically, or is it just how we approach the conflict? I guess I don't.
Yeah, so let me jump in with that one right away, because for our listeners' sake.
Mm-hmm.
I want to teach people how to live in peace. Peace starts with self. And peace also starts with acceptance. There are some things I was born into, some experience, the way I was raised, my belief systems, and all of that has made me who I am. Because of where I check off on that list, I easily could be a fighter with everything, but it didn't serve me because it really doesn't fit well in how I feel on the inside or how I want Marty to turn out as a person. So I had to start doing the work to get to a point in a place of how do I handle conflict better or in a different way other than balling up my fist. How else can I handle conflict? My greatest tool today of fighting back, for lack of a better word, is through my communication. I am learning how to speak to it. And when I speak to it, I speak to it with such authority that a lot of times people that probably would have tried to push me into a physical fight, they back off because they realize, oh, she's not going to take it. She's not playing. And she knows enough people. So even if she doesn't know, she knows somebody that knows. And man, they're going to, oh, if this lands in court, I'm going to be paying a whole lot of money or I might go to jail. Because I had to learn how to fight with my brain and not with my fists. So we want to teach children how to do that. And that's one of the reasons that I said to the parents, understand what the policies are. What's the policies in Missouri? What's the policies in your community, in that school? If you understand what the laws and the policies are, then now you can speak to it from a place where you will be keeping your child safe. And when you're not there, those other people will, because they understand the consequences. See, when Gail said, I understand you all have the bus structured and set up by age, and that will put her in the back of the bus. But because this is happening, I'm demanding that you all keep my child safe. And because Gail had that conversation and it was documented, they had to comply. Had they not, and they still kept putting Lee in the back and Lee had a fight and Lee got hurt, then that bus company would have been sued. That school could have been sued. That parent of that child could have been sued. So you see how it starts to take you into a different aspect of how to build these safety guards for your children that are being bullied when you learn how to fight differently. So now we're fighting with policy, we're fighting with protection, we're fighting with communication, we're fighting with understanding. And one of the ways in the understanding piece, I'm telling you to find out as much about your bully as you can. So and so when you start asking your child, hey, is their parents married? Oh no, they live with their grandmother. That's a big red flag. You already understand where some of this hurt and pain is coming from now from this bully. Hey, do I'm looking at how the child dresses or what have you. Do you know if anything ever happened to that child? Well, no, I don't know personally. I just know that there's a whole lot of rumors. They say that she's into, whatever. Yeah. So you start to understand, this is possibly where all of this is coming from. This is the level of hurt that this bully is dealing with. So then now maybe how can you turn that bully into being someone that you keeping your child safe, but now I'm going to come in and lean in and maybe become an advocate for this bully. Maybe I can love on this bully in a way to where that bully will then start to protect and love on my child, because what this bully sees in my child is what it really needs. You'd be surprised. You would be surprised. I go into schools. I'm gonna give you a quick example. I go into schools, and when we introduce, On Gun Institute, some of them, because of the they'll start to laugh, almost like, and that laugh is really coming from a place of it's uncomfortableness. Sometimes children will start to laugh at something and poke fun of something because they're uncomfortable around it. Ungoodness to and the first thing that I say is, you know what? I used to do the same thing. I was class clown in high school. But what I realized is that I was making jokes and was clowning because I really didn't want the attention to be on me because I really was lacking a lot of things. So when I associate their laughter to being associated with something that makes them look bad, I never get laughter out of them again. I never get it out of them again because they don't want to be associated with that. But so I don't tell them that's who they are. I tell them that's what I was. Yeah, I see. I was class clown, but when I was laughing and making jokes, it's really because I didn't want people to really see who I really was and what was really going on with me. So I'd be the first one to make a joke and laugh because I was really running from some things I didn't want people to see. That might not be you, but that's how I showed up. So I understand. There's no bigger jokester in this room than me. I got a whole one-woman show that's where I'm making people laugh and think or what have you because of that. And so when you hit it head on, but you take I'm not pointing at them. I'm really telling them about me. But what I said gives them a reflection of themselves in the mirror. And then they don't want any parts of that. Well, I'm not going to laugh anymore because I don't want her thinking that something's wrong with me because ain't nothing wrong with me. So I'm not going to laugh anymore. And now I check the bully. That's the person that was the ringleader that was going to they were going to keep disrupting in that manner. And I was able to reel them back in. So that's those types of little, strategies that we use and it helps or what have you. And those are the kind of things that we teach parents and administrators and teachers how to do that.
Okay, thank you. That was really, that was insightful. You basically answered both of the questions, really. Thank you.
You're very welcome. Gail, if you're talking, we don't hear you.
I'm good. I just really appreciate everything that you're saying and that you took the opportunity to talk with us today. And I hope we can have you back. But I know you've been just on a huge schedule. You have the Oscars there behind you. You were at the Oscars, the Emmys. You're going to Japan and Spain and all kinds of other places, as well as all in St. Louis. So.
And you know what? I will be in Ibiza, Spain, doing a workshop with Scarlett Lewis. And Scarlett Lewis, unfortunately, her son was killed in a school massacre, and that was in, oh goodness, I can never think of the school. I apologize. But Scarlett has a organization called Choose Love, and I am so excited to be in the space and doing this workshop. We're doing a train the trainers there. Now, mind you, we're going to be training those who live in this space of peace and love, and they are the creators of understanding these things. So why would they need us? Because of exactly what happened to me the other day. Trauma has no face, place, or race attached to it. It just shows up when you least expect it. We all can be triggered by trauma, no matter who we are, what we are, where we come from. And if we're not prepared to handle it, even the best of the best, I'm talking about from Oprah Winfrey to, the Prince of Wales, it doesn't matter who it is. Anybody can deal with something and it catches them off guard emotionally. And you start to see that human side of them, meaning that raw side. And that raw side is not going to always come out the same way out of them as it would out of you, and vice versa. What do we do to reset? How do we get back to that place of keeping ourselves safe so we can keep everyone around us safe? And that's why we're going to Ibiza, Spain to do that workshop. And then I'll be doing the same thing in Japan in September. But what I find in this other world of mine is when we talk about world peace and we pray for world peace, we first have to make sure the people praying aren't in pieces. And we've been some broken people for a long time. So I'm trying to help people get back whole again. So as they pray for world peace, it'll actually be a real thing.
Thank you so much. And I hope maybe we can have you again on another day if you, end up with some free time.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And you know what, Lee, I want to say this to you before I go. I think you should write a letter. And I think you should write a letter about what it was like being a kid on a bus that was bullied and what that experience was like for you and what you had to do to get through that and how your mother showed up for you. I think it's important for us to hear from individuals who have made it on the other side, who've gone through a situation and turned out okay on the other side. I can see that letter being a letter to the bus driver. Like, write that letter to the bus driver so that that bus driver understands that there's probably another child on the bus that's just like you. And I can see that letter going viral. I really can, because there's bus drivers all over the world, and they need to understand and hear from a child's voice who had experienced that and coming back to it now saying, I wish I know what I know now, but I want to share this information with you today in case there's another Lee on the bus.
No, I'll look this up too, Marty, but Lee did write part of a chapter in a book, and I'm not sure if it has about the bus, but it did have some things about bullying or trauma and how it responded, and I'm not really sure about the bus part, but I will look
So
that.
it didn't correlate my excerpt. I think my overall chapter that I sent did, but the excerpt that she quoted me on was about self-harm. Because while yes, I did tell my mother about the bullying and the advocacy, I did not tell her about this other piece to the puzzle.
Got you. I got you. So I had no clue that you had written about this or written about, but that's part of, me as a healer. I feel certain things, and I just feel like that there is still some release and some healing that can come forth through you when you now tap into the power piece of it. Like, we can't change what happened. We can only change how we feel about it. And because you've made it through, but I'm sure if ever you hear about another child experiencing that, that could also trigger you. So now take power over it and be an advocate for a child that may not be able to go and tell their mother and have a mother respond like Gail did. Write that letter and let us get that letter in the hands of bus drivers and let them know, what seat were you sitting in when you were on the bus? Do you remember your mom said you was in the back of the bus? Were you in the last seat or?
So the way it worked for my school was there was like sections of the bus. And so the higher grade level you were, the further back you got. So the bullying really started when I was in 5th grade, and then it continued on to 6th, 7th, and 8th.
So when you were right, and so through the trauma.
So it started when I was supposed to be sitting in the back of the bus, and then it continued. And by middle school, I advocated for myself, and then my mother continued to advocate for me that no, I need to sit near the bus driver.
So this is I'm just throwing this at you right now. I would entitle that letter, From a Child at the Back of the Bus. From a child at the back of the bus. Write that letter, Lee, get that to me, and I'm going to do something with that. I'm going to help to get some of your power back, and then I'm going to help to protect some other children because of that.
What's interesting too, Dr. Marty, is they had a lot of the bus stops in one section of where it was stopping, they had drug drops, those places, and people were picking up their drugs and dealing. And I did get the police kind of involved with that in that neighborhood, but the police were well aware of it and trying to do something already about that. So it was kind of interesting.
Nothing new is under the sun. There's nothing new under the sun. but it
Well,
doesn't mean that we have to still deal with it. You know, it's time for us to put a stop to it. It really is. And I tell people, like, I mean, yeah, I happen to be a Christian, so I speak from that place of, you know, even the Bible speaks of there's time for war and there's time for peace. So I feel like there's time for us to go to war for peace. It's time for us to go to war for peace. You know, because we've been to war for war. We living in that. But it's time to go to war for peace. So write that letter, Lee. Get that to me. Because that's going to be a teaching tool.
And thanks so much for coming today, and we really, really appreciate it.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for having me. Felix, it was a pleasure meeting you. And
Thank you.
I look forward to seeing you again soon. So I hope I said something today that will be helpful to somebody somewhere.
You definitely did. Yes, thank you.
Okay, you all have a great day.
All right. Bye.
And